My name is Margaret Ellis. I'm 64 years old, and on the morning of September 11th, 2025, I died on my kitchen floor, with the news still playing in the other room. I live in a small town in Ohio. I was a nurse for 40 years at the county hospital before I retired. Now my days are filled with simple things. I have a little garden out back where I grow tomatoes and cucumbers. My daughter Jessica lives just 10 minutes away, and her two children, Leo and Grace, are the absolute light of my life. I'm the kind of person who finds comfort in routine. A cup of coffee in the morning, watching the birds at the feeder, doing the crossword puzzle, saying my prayers over the kitchen sink while I wash the dishes from dinner. I never wanted a big, loud life. I was happy with my small, quiet corner of the world. I've always been a worrier, though. As a nurse, you see so much pain, and as a grandmother, you worry about the world you're leaving behind. The night before I died, I couldn't sleep. The news was on all day, all night. The assassination of that young political man, Charlie Kirk. It just broke my heart. It wasn't about his politics, not for me. It was the hate. I saw it on the screen, the reporters, the people they interviewed. Everyone was so angry, so full of poison for the other side. I sat in my old recliner, the one with the worn-out arms, and I just cried. I cried for his family, I cried for the person who did it, and I cried for our country. It felt like we were tearing ourselves apart, piece by piece. I prayed for hours, just asking God to bring some peace. I finally fell asleep in the chair around 2 a.m. The next morning, I woke up feeling heavy. The house was quiet, but that feeling of dread from the night before was still there, sitting on my chest. I went into the kitchen to make some coffee. I remember the smell of the old grounds in the can. I reached for a mug, one my grandson Leo had painted for me, all blue and green streaks. And then it happened. It wasn't like in the movies. There was no big dramatic fall. It was a sharp, biting pain in the center of my chest, like a hot poker. It took my breath away, all of it. I couldn't even make a sound. My hand went to my chest, and the mug slipped from my other hand. It shattered on the linoleum floor. I remember seeing the blue and green pieces scatter. And then I was falling. The world tilted sideways. The last thing I saw was the ceiling light, looking like a fuzzy, distant star. The last thing I heard was my own heart beating one last frantic time. Then silence. But it wasn't the end. Suddenly, I wasn't on the floor anymore. I was floating near the ceiling. I looked down and I saw myself. My body lying there in my old housecoat, surrounded by broken pieces of the mug. It was the strangest thing. There was no pain, no fear, just a strange detachment. I saw my gray hair fanned out on the floor. I saw the worry lines on my own face. My first thought was, oh, Jessica is going to be so upset about this mess. A mother's thought, I guess. From the living room, I could still hear the television. The voices were muffled, distant, like they were coming from underwater. They were still talking about the assassination, arguing, blaming. That river of anger was still flowing, even as I was, wherever I was. Then I felt a pull. It wasn't rough, it was gentle, like a current in a slow-moving river. The kitchen began to fade. The sound of the TV, the sight of my own body, it all started to get smaller and smaller, like I was looking at it through the wrong end of a pair of binoculars. I was moving into a tunnel. It wasn't a dark, scary tunnel. It was made of soft, swirling light, like clouds at sunrise. The angry voices of the world disappeared completely. And for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, there was only silence, a deep, perfect, and holy silence. It was the most peaceful feeling I have ever known. All the worry I'd carried my whole life as a nurse, a mother, a grandmother, it just lifted off of me. Like a heavy winter coat I'd finally been allowed to take off. I didn't know where I was going, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid. At the end of this beautiful, silent journey, the light opened up. It wasn't a place you could describe with words like room or sky. It was just being in a place of pure existence. And he was there. I knew instantly it was Jesus. Now, I need to be very clear about this. He did not look like any painting I'd ever seen in a church. There was no stained glass, no golden halo. It's hard to even say what he looked like. His form was made of a light that didn't hurt your eyes. It was a light that felt like truth, like home. But the first thing I felt from him wasn't joy. It wasn't a booming welcome. It was sorrow. A deep, profound, and heavy sorrow. It radiated from him like warmth from a fire. It was a sadness so pure, so deep, it made the grief I'd felt the night before seem like a shallow puddle. It was the grief of a father watching his children hurt each other, and I felt it in every part of my soul. The air around him was still, heavy with this sacred sadness. It felt like the whole universe had stopped to hold its breath. He didn't speak with a voice you could hear with your ears. His thoughts just arrived inside of me. They were clearer than words, gentler than a whisper. And the first thing he communicated to me was, "Margaret, you see?" I didn't know what to say. I just stood in his presence, feeling this overwhelming mix of peace from the place and this deep sorrow from him. Tears filled my eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness or happiness. They were tears of understanding. I was crying because I was sharing his heartbreak. And then he showed me. The light around us shifted. It was like we were standing on a balcony, looking down on the world. But I wasn't seeing places. I was seeing hearts. First, he showed me a family dinner table. It looked like so many I'd seen in my life. A mother, a father, a son in college, a teenage daughter. But there was no peace there. The father's face was red with anger. The son was yelling back, his hands balled into fists. The mother was just staring down at her plate, her heart broken, as her husband and son threw terrible words at each other like stones. Words about politics, about what was right and what was wrong. But they weren't talking about ideas anymore. They were attacking each other. Jesus' thought entered my mind again, so full of pain. The enemy doesn't need to break down the door when he is invited to the dinner table. I saw the hatred. It wasn't just anger. It was a living thing, a dark, ugly thread connecting them, pulling them apart. Then the scene changed. He showed me a church. It was a beautiful, old building with tall windows. But inside, it was being torn in two. People who had worshipped together for decades, who had baptized each other's children and buried each other's parents, were standing on opposite sides of the aisle, glaring. Their prayers had become weapons. They used my name, Jesus said to me, but they did not carry my heart. They had chosen a flag over my cross. I saw a line being drawn right down the center of the sanctuary, and it wasn't a line of chalk. It was a crack, a deep chasm, and it was getting wider and wider. Then he showed me a city. I couldn't tell which one. It could have been any city in America. I saw people walking down the streets, their heads down, their eyes filled with suspicion. Neighbor looking at neighbor not with kindness but with fear. What side are you on? Who did you vote for? The questions were silent, but they were screaming in the air. And then I saw them. All around the people, in the shadows of the buildings, at the dinner tables, in the pews of the church, were these things. They weren't monsters with horns and pitchforks. They were like smudges of darkness, like heat rising off a summer road, but cold. They were spirits, and they were feeding. They clung to the angry people, whispering in their ears, making their rage hotter, their suspicion deeper. They feasted on the division. They grew fat and strong on the hatred. I watched as one of these shadows whispered to a man reading his phone, and I saw the man's face twist in rage. He typed something full of venom, and the shadow seemed to smile as it drank in the hate he was putting out into the world. It was terrifying. I started to weep. What is this? Lord, what is this? His presence wrapped around me like a warm blanket. His sorrow was still there, but now there was a powerful love mixed in with it. This is the true war, he communicated. The soul of your nation is sick. The assassination that broke your heart, Margaret, was not the cause. It was a symptom. A fever breaking on the skin of a body already poisoned. He continued, and his words burned into my soul. The true danger is not the bullet, but the hatred it awakens. America is standing at a river of blood, a river fed by angry words, bitter hearts, and families turning on their own. And only love can turn it back into living water. I saw it then. I saw how every hateful comment online, every family argument, every church split was another drop of poison into that river. We were all feeding it every day. My children are perishing, he said, his sadness washing over me again. They are so busy fighting for their earthly kingdoms that they have forgotten my heavenly one. They ask for victory when they should be begging for mercy. They ask for justice when they should be offering forgiveness. I stood there, just taking it all in. I had spent my life as a nurse, trying to heal bodies, and here Jesus was showing me the sickness in our souls. What can we do? I asked, my own spirit crying out. It's too much. It's too big. It starts small, he answered gently. It starts in here. And I felt his presence touch my heart. It starts with one person choosing mercy over being right. It starts with one prayer for an enemy, a real prayer, from the heart. It starts with one family turning off the news and looking into each other's eyes again. Every act of quiet love, every moment of forgiveness, is a drop of clean, living water in that poisoned river. It may seem small, but it is the only thing that can heal the land. I felt such a profound peace in his presence. All the chaos of the world was gone, all the fear, all the anger. Here, there was only this perfect, sorrowful, powerful love. I never wanted to leave. I felt like a tired traveler who had finally come home. Please, I begged him, please let me stay here with you. I'm so tired. The world is too broken. I don't want to go back. I felt like a child, pleading with her father. He looked at me, and for the first time, I felt the sorrow recede, and a gentle, loving smile take its place. It was a smile that held all the stars in the universe. My dear child, he said, the thought filled with so much tenderness it made my soul ache. Your work is not done. Your death was not an accident. I have brought you here to show you this, so you can go back and be a witness. You must tell them what you saw. You must tell them that I am weeping for what they are doing to each other. Tell them the war they are fighting is not against flesh and blood, but against the darkness that feeds on their division. He paused, and his next words were a mission. Go back and tell them to love. That is all. Just love. It is the only weapon that will win this war. I didn't want to go. The thought of leaving him, of leaving this place, was the most painful thing I have ever experienced. It was a heartbreak beyond words. I cried, begging him to let me stay. But I knew I had to go. I am with you, was the last thing he said to me, always. And then I felt that pull again. But this time, it was pulling me back, away from the light, away from him. The beautiful silence was broken by a rushing sound, and I felt myself falling, faster and faster, back into the darkness, back toward the noise. The first thing I felt was pain, a crushing, burning pain in my chest, like an elephant was sitting on me. The first thing I heard was a scream. It was my daughter, Jessica. She's breathing. Oh my God, Mom, you're breathing. I gasped, a huge, ragged intake of air that felt like swallowing fire and glass. My eyes flew open. The light was blinding. Not the gentle light of heaven, but the harsh, fluorescent light of a hospital room. There were faces all around me, people in scrubs, their expressions a mixture of shock and disbelief. A machine next to me was beeping frantically. I tried to speak, but only a croak came out. Jessica was holding my hand, her face soaked with tears. Mom, can you hear me? Oh, Mom, we lost you. They said you were gone. It was all so confusing. The peace was gone. The sorrowful love of Jesus was gone. All that was left was the pain, the noise, and the smell of antiseptic. I just closed my eyes and wept. I wasn't crying because I was alive. I was crying because I had just left home. I had just left him. Later, The doctor came in. He was a young man with kind eyes, but he looked completely baffled. He sat on the edge of my bed and looked at my chart. "Mrs. Ellis," he said, shaking his head slowly, "your daughter found you in full cardiac arrest. The paramedics worked on you for over 20 minutes. Here at the hospital we continued for another 10. You were clinically dead for a very long time. By all accounts, you shouldn't be here. And even if you were, you shouldn't be you. There should be significant brain damage, but there's not. We can't explain it." I just looked at him and nodded. "I can," I whispered. "I'm not a politician. I'm not a preacher. I'm just a grandmother from Ohio who died on her kitchen floor. But I was sent back with a message, and I promised him I would deliver it. He asked me to tell you that heaven is real, and it is watching us with a broken heart. The division in our country, the anger we feel toward people we've never even met, it is not a political problem. It is a spiritual poison. And it is feeding a darkness that wants to destroy us all from the inside out. Jesus didn't ask me what political party I belonged to. He didn't care. All he cared about was the condition of my heart and the condition of our hearts. He wants us to stop fighting each other. He wants us to turn off the screens that feed us rage and look into the eyes of our family, our neighbors, the people we disagree with, and see a child of God. He said the only thing that can heal us is love, the kind of love that forgives, the kind of love that listens instead of yells, the kind of love that builds a bridge, not a wall. So I'm asking you, not as someone who knows anything special, but as someone who was given a second chance. The next time you feel that spark of anger toward the other side, whoever that is for you, please stop. Take a breath and say a prayer for them instead. Drop one clean drop of living water into that poisoned river. Because heaven is real, Jesus is real, and he hears you, and right now his heart is breaking.